Another round of Nami at locals. We're up against the Betty matchup this time, and it's one that's rather tough. A deck that discards their hand to play a bunch of weenies and super buff them to oblivion. Going wide is just a naturally good plan against Nami. Just sometimes you run out of resources, you draw the wrong cards, you draw your Deathwings when you need your Gum Gavels or whatever. But regardless, the opponent I'm playing against today is just a good friend at the LGS, good vibes in general, so I hope you enjoy the games. I try and do something different here. I actually decide to go on the play because I'm thinking, okay, this matchup is very aggressive, and if I can stimmy like some level of bleeding, then that might actually just help me in general. So one of the peel-offs gets sent to the bottom, but I do have another one that gets drawn here, and I'm like, okay, I mean, that's pretty good. I'm thinning out my deck already. I've kind of drawn that card. Apis has kind of taken down a bunch of my resources, but I've kind of just drawn the wrong half of my deck anyway. I go to 3 Dawn here. They do nothing on turn 1, which is fantastic here. I'm going to play my peel-off out here and draw 2 cards because I'm thinking, okay, I got some characters in hand. If they go for combat, I can generally counter out unless they swing 8k, which would be really weird. They drop the 2k here, kill out my Apis, and they're thinking about what to do. Should they play another threat? Should they go in with the Betty? And they go in with the Betty. They swing for 7, and I was like, all right, fine, I'll take that. First trigger, not so great. It's a Kaya. But at this point, what I'll do is, okay, peel-off, Kaya? What do I really want to do here? Do I want to filter? Do I want to just draw raw cards? I think I decide to filter here because I'm like, okay, some of these cards in my hand just aren't that great anyway. I drop the Buggy and the Mr. one. I play another Kaya, and I just try and sculpt my hand here. Just so I drop a Zeff and I drop another Buggy. And I figure like, okay, generally speaking, I'm good from there. I probably should have just played the peel off and passed because I can just counter out a little bit wider, which ultimately, like this turn, I think is probably the biggest decision point that led me down the wrong path here. I don't think sculpting ended up being the right call, especially because I was on the play and I needed more raw card advantage. They play the 4 cost that makes my Nami minus 1k, which is also kind of annoying here, but regardless, they only have 2 Dawn to really attack in with. They could use leader ability obviously here to buff up their stuff, but they choose not to in this case, so I have to, in this case, they swing in for 7k. I have to gavel up to 8k, mill over 2 cards. Mill over the 2 Deathwings actually is pretty good here in my opinion. I go up to a 7 Dawn here, thinking about what to do. Do I start attacking in, forcing cards out of their hand? Really what I'm going to do here is just start things off with a Zeff, bounce out the 2 cost here, mill 2 cards, and then Brickfist the 4 cost. And I'm thinking, okay, if I can stem the bleeding here, I can take 1 hit and I generally should be fine, right? Like I should be able to not take too much here and rely on some of my triggers. Like if 2 of my triggers can draw me cards, I think I generally should be fine, but I'm still recovering from the bad decision I made that one time. So Zeff is getting its power reduced, and then they play the ultimate 2 cost here. If that Zeff was allowed to untap and swing, I honestly think I could have won this matchup. Unfortunately, another Kaya off my trigger, which isn't great. I go to 9 Dawn here. I find myself a Nojiko. I'm going to start things off with a peel-off. Something I should have done way earlier. I should have been sculpting later because I could have been able to sculpt away those Deathwings I have. Now I'm playing my Kayas here, and I decide to get rid of the Mr. 1 and the Buggy here. Keep the Impel down to discard for later. And I'm thinking like, how do I want to play this out? Do I want to keep Nojiko to counter out? Do I want to, kind of remove something right now? Decide to play out the Nojiko right now and bounce out one of the 2 cost 3Ks, which is, I mean, that's going to help stem the bleeding a little bit here. I'm thinking like, do I swing? No, I don't think so. I think I'm going to end up taking a hit here, and I'm going to go like Gavel and Rubber Band here. But I think if I take a hit here, if I can get like a 1 cost event, maybe I can play it, maybe another Gavel, maybe another Rubber Band, and I can just like draw into more stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'll hold up the Dawn, and that way I don't give them a card. That's another thing too, right? Like they could very much take the hit and just get another card, which is going to be very problematic because they're only really discarding 1 a turn. And so now they're going to start like distributing their Dawn. They're going to use like their leader ability and just kind of buff up here. So they're going to go in for a big swing. So there's a 5k on their side. There's a 7k on their side as well, because that's going to be 3 plus 3 off the leader ability plus 1. Since they have a 7 cost, this 3k that they just played has rush. And now that's going to be, well, I mean, that's going to be like 8k. Right, based on what that's going at, and that's going to be 7k. So we have a 7, 7, and an 8, plus a leader that can also swing it in as well. Leader swinging in for 7 as well, and yeah, that's just going to get even bigger. 9k swinging at me. So I'm going to go Rubber Band first. to counter that out, and then that's going to swing in as well. And then I'm going to take that hit, no trigger off that. I'm going to take that hit, no trigger. My triggers have been awful this game. Like, I'm telling you, look, you're going to see what the result of this is if my triggers were only better. If my triggers were only better. Yes, I understand, like, I'm still reeling off that decision I made to, like, double Kaya instead of just peel off and hold my resources. It would have been, like, honestly net better. I'm going to swing 5k at the 3 cost here. They're going to counter out. They forget that that only takes them to 5, so I point out, I'm like, oh, you still need 1 more. And they're like, yeah, there you go. So, counter out there. Then what I do, I swing 2k at the 2k there. That's going to die. I take 3k, I take 3 Dawn. I'm like, all right, I'm going to attach that, swing that again at the 3k, just take more cards out of their hand, and they're going to counter out there. I'm like, okay, that's perfectly fine. I think, like, I have 5 Dawn here. I want to generally use those 5 Dawn to, well, cast out my 2 love loves, and then I can probably draw into, like, a 1-cost event, which I can use for my last Dawn, and I just try and, like, make that effort from there. I just have to hope they don't get more rush characters, because they can buff up their board pretty well. They're gonna play the 4-cost card that I bounced earlier to get my Nami down by 1k, which is really annoying. They're gonna use leader ability, buff up their board here. It's just a really tough matchup in general. Just the way they buff their board, take advantage of that. They can just attach all this extra Dawn. Just go for these, like, pretty decent swings here. I'm going to go 9k, draw a card, and that's going to allow me, because that's going to swing 9k. And then Spada to rearrange some cards, see what I want to draw here. I don't really want to draw any of these cards, I'm not going to lie. I could have drawn, honestly, the Zeff and just, like, countered out that way, but I really don't want to do that because they're going to swing 9 again here and kind of swing in that way. And at this point, I'm kind of forced to do it. Spada, redraw, find the Kaya, have to ditch the Kaya to that. Then what they're going to be able to do, and I point out, I'm like, hey, they just played that. You can't swing with that, because if they do swing with that, I'm dead. I'm like, whoa, why was that getting rushed? So they're going to swing it with lead. I have to take the leader hit. And I have an Apis. Let me tell you, all 5 of my triggers were terrible. Terrible. If any of my triggers at least, like, bounce, draw me some cards. But I mean, hey, that's the luck of the Nami draw here, right? So that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, I can't use Apis here, so I have to just thinking about, like, how I swing, right? Like, do I swing equal so that I can pull cards out of their hand, or do I start swinging, like, more to remove cards out of their hand? So I go 3k at the Nojiko and swing at the 3 power stuff. They counter out there. They have 1 more card in hand, and I'm thinking, like, okay, I gotta attach a Dawn because it's probably a 2k. Then I'm able to kill that. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, they have a 2k in hand, or else they want to counter that out. But I'm thinking, like, also maybe that was a mistake, because then, like, they just have, like, less cards to play with. It might have been better just to actually have them, like, counter out of that. So I have a Deathwing here. I essentially need all of my Dawn to make this work, right? Like, I need to draw into other options here that I can cast. So I need to hold up my Dawn. I can't just, like, rely on just kind of killing, like, opponents' threats here, which definitely is a route that I could have gone for, but I just don't think it was the correct route in general. I have no life to work with. If they start playing out rush creatures, like, I'm done. So leader ability is going to come down. They're going to look for some cards here with the Betty. That card right there is going to have rush right now, and they're doing some math here because they're going to be able to buff up their board. They're just distributing some Dawn right now, seeing how they want to play it out. And I'm thinking this is going to be skin of my teeth if I can even survive here. And guess what? So they're going to swing in for that first. So I'm going to gavel, kind of rearrange my cards. I don't want any of those. Those are going to go to the bottom. I'm going to counter out that way as well, because that swung in for 7, counter out for 8. Then I'm going to Deathwing, counter that out for 11, draw 2 cards. And honestly, the draw isn't that bad. At this point, I need to keep drawing based on their attacks here. So I'm going to love, draw a card. And then they're going to swing 5k, and I survive with the Zeff. Skin of my teeth, folks. Skin of my teeth. Oh, baby, it's close. So I'm going to untap, and guess what? We draw ourselves a peel off. We are deep in the think tank right now, and I'm like, well, it's now or never that I have to go for the swing. So we're going to peel off. We're going to draw 2 cards. I find another peel off, which I'm kind of lamenting because I wish these were in my triggers. I don't want to cast these cards. And I'm looking at my hand right now, and unfortunately, they have no cards in hand. So I could attack in with a Nami and mill 1, but I'm at 7 cards. If you look at my hand, I can mill 5. 1 off the Nami trigger, 2 off the rubber bands on a swing, and then 2 off of the gavel. I am so close. If one of my triggers drew me some cards, maybe if I just drew off the peel-offs that much earlier in the game, like, the game could have been different. But this match was so close. But unfortunately, that's going to be the GG there. Ultimately, I concede. I'm like thinking, like, how do I manipulate? There's no other way to mill. If I wipe out their board, maybe, but that's GG's. Good games, opponent. Let me know if you want to see more aggressive matchups in the future, maybe against Law or maybe other stuff like that. I'd love to bring that to the channel, but for now, that's another day of locals done.